Okay. Great. Now, just so that, I know who I'm speaking with, can you just share with me which church you're coming from and if this is your first time serving as a communication secretary?
It's Kevin here. I currently leading the new form communication team in Leeds West. It's a church plant, but we're growing rapidly.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay, my name's Mary Grant from Erdington, Birmingham. I'm actually the church clerk who's had communications dropped in her lap. So it's the first time, yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yes.
Pastor, good morning. My name is Alexander Usman.
Okay.
Church clerk for New Generation SDHS, Ghanaian Church in Leeds. And also a member of the communications team. I'm multitasking at the moment. I'm on the clerks and I'm also listening to his one as well. Yeah.
Wonderful. So 2 churches from Leeds. And
Exactly.
also, I think prior to communication becoming a role in the church clerks used to handle that role. So I can understand. Yeah. The next person.
My name's Jonathan. I'm from the Manchester North Church, and I'm actually part of the AV team, but was recommended to join by our head elder.
Wonderful. Yeah. Yeah, the next person. Now, if you just join in, we're introducing ourselves in terms of which church, and if this is the first time you are joining, you're serving as a communication secretary. Yes.
My name is Teddy Nancer. I'm from Wigan Church, and this is my first year doing communications.
Great.
My name is...
Good morning. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go on.
You can go on, brother. It's all right.
Kevin Wakandu, here at Warsaw SDA Church, and serving as the head of the department for the first time.
Thank you.
I'm Amira Flores. I'm from Bartley Green, Birmingham. So I'm just a newly elected communication leader.
Great. Thank you.
My name is Jasper Mchingami from Kobe Church, and I'm the newly elected communications leader.
Great. Thank you. Is that all? Have we got everyone? Excellent. Yes. Now we'll spend the next few minutes looking at the role and also what it involves to serve as a communication secretary in your local church. I've heard many people say that they don't really know what the role entails. And this is why we're doing this, just to give you pointers. Some of you have been in this role and have been serving, doing what you think is the best. And of course, we are always grateful for what you've been doing. Let me see if I can share the screen now. Okay, so the idea is getting started within the department. Many churches underestimate the role of the communication department, in the sense that some people even think that it has to be, it has to do the job of evangelism. But it is a specific role which looks at certain things that enhances what a church is about. Now, so what do we do in terms of communication? Improving the way your church communicates can have a significant impact on its success. So if there is a lack of a communication process in your church, there is always some form of confusion. But the role has to do with making sure that we are relaying information from leaders, from the departments to the audiences, that is, whether we're speaking to pathfinders, youth, or the whole church. Now, what do? We adopt innovative communication strategies. And when you do that, you can enhance your church's outreach and also promotes its message effectively on media channels that you choose to use. And we'll be looking at the different channels that you use in your church. It has to do with the visibility of your church. How visible is your church? And we'll be looking at different items that fall under the communication role. Visibility is about presence. What sort of presence does your church have in its community? I've been to a few places, different churches, where you have to wonder what happens in this building or who are they, because sometimes there is no signage or there is nothing to show that this group of people, this is what they do. And so how do you come in as a communication secretary? It will require your observance. And this is more in terms of the church being portrayed to external audiences. So many of our churches are operating under what we call low visibility. Low visibility, which is that people hardly know or can recognize that we are where we are situated. Now, the communities where we are situated seems to be unaware of our presence, and we refer to that as under a cloud. Now, your role as a communication leader, one of the roles is that you help to foster the church, to be visible. It is very important when talking about visibility to focus primarily on your local communities. They are your mission field, your target audience. So now, if I say, think about your church, where it is situated. The front page, is it inviting? Does it give an indication what you do? These are some of the things that you have to make an observation of and also discuss with the church leaders. So one of your priority roles, your primary roles, is monitoring church appearance, its location, and also its identity. Now, if I should ask all of you, has your church got a good signage? Has your church got a good signage to say that this is, let's say, Birmingham Central Seventh-day Adventist Church? Or can people just walk by and not notice that this is a Seventh-day Adventist church? Can you unmute and just say you have a signage? And
yeah, we have signage in Erdington, quite a large one actually, and we have one on the end of the building, which we're on a side road, and we have
yes. Did we lose you? Okay. Anyone else? I'm sure we lost your connection.
For us, I think we we used to have one because we are renting a community hall. But we used to have that one, the portable one that you'd put outside. But at the moment, because I'm just newly elected, I'm not quite entirely sure, because I haven't been seeing it for some time. So,
okay, yeah, I think the good thing is that if you have a signage, it helps in advertising the church, and this falls under the communication department. And so your role is to observe whether the signage is visible, whether it is, fit for purpose, and whether it requires, a modification or a new one. Is there anyone here whose church hasn't got a signage?
Yes.
Okay. And has anybody mentioned that, in your congregation?
Not particularly, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, so now this is your role to raise that with your church board, to put it on the agenda that your church is not visible enough. Now, even if it is in the directory of the North England Conference or the British Union Conference, if people are searching for the church and they get there and there is no signage, it can frustrate them and you might lose them.
Pastor, can I just quickly make an input here?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so quite interesting you make that point of having a good signage, because it's something that we are aware of. We haven't got one at Leeds West. We haven't got one. We are aware that we need to put one in place. We are currently renting, as with many plants, and one of the other things one have to go through is to find out from the landlord whether or not it's acceptable to have, signage on the property and those sort of things. We are going through that, and obviously this is a matter of having a negotiation whether or not it's possible. But in saying this, there are people who have been looking for the church online, etc., but not being able to see a signage, and I think this is very important. Yeah. One may find the location via the Google, but not able to see the sign. Could be another issue where it's located. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you for your input here, because it is quite practical. And the idea is that we have that responsibility to bring that to the church, that these are the reasons why we need the signage. And so, yes, go ahead and do that. Another thing is that some of the signages are quite dated. Just recently, we had a conversation, this is among all the communication leaders across the British Isles, to see how we can promote the use of the new logo for our signages across Britain, so that when you move from one church to the other, we're not seeing different logos all around. And so if you are just about to, have a new signage, make sure you contact the conference communication director, for him to provide you with the new logo for the signage. You with me? Okay, so
sorry about that. Just a quick one. Someone has got their hand up, but I was just trying to find out, who did you say to contact? Or is it the conference director?
Yeah, contact the conference communication director. Yes, okay. For the new logo. Yes, I've seen a hand, Mary.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, we've had a couple of changes of logos in the NEC, and it actually has a financial impact on our churches when we keep doing this, because definitely the type of signage we have cost us quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then if the logo keeps changing, then, you know, it's times of austerity. You know, it would be nice to have everything uniform.
Yeah.
And also I was going to say, with regard to the churches that worship in other, you know, in rented premises, there's quite some good ideas out there, even old-fashioned ideas for mobile signage.
Yeah.
You know, that you can just put out on the days when you're actually in the building.
Yeah. And thank you for
just a thought.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, Mary. I was going to say that and it escaped me. Yes, there are mobile signages that a lot of our churches who haven't got their own premises use. And you can inquire from that is from Pastor Joe Philpott, churches that have got their own mobile signages, how to also get it for your church. So yes, that is possible. Okay. So yes, in terms of the logo as well, this is the second time that a church is, has changed its logo, and the change came about only just about a couple of years ago, but we're looking at rolling it out to all our churches around the globe. It is not something that is changed, frequently, but it takes a while to change it. Okay. So that is, if you were going to have a signage and you use the old logo, then of course that would be a problem to change it to the new one. Okay. So as I said earlier on, making sure that the church can be found also in local directories. So it is not sufficient to have the signage in front of your church, but look through the directory in your local council. They have directories, or you can contact, I don't know if Yellow Pages and so on. You can ask them, that you want to place your church address in their directory. So you can explore this locally, and that can be done, for you. I don't know how many of you have explored that, but it is something that you can add in terms of visibility for your church. And so, in a summary, make sure that the church has an exterior sign with the official Adventist logo. And so when we talk about visibility of the church, the two areas that typically impact you are your church's visibility and also the visibility of the work that you do, why your community must care. And that will take us to the other roles or responsibilities that you have. And I use the word visibility because it is important. The work that we do has to do with outreach. We support the outreach program of the church. Visibility helps to make your church more relatable, personable, and also visible. And how do we do this with the local media? And this is where your role as a communication leader also comes in. Reporting your church's activities to the local press, radio, and television are very, very important. And so it is always important, part of your role, to look at the calendar of events for your local church and look ahead which of the programs will be relevant to the community. Now, if they will be relevant to the community, perhaps it is a health talk by a specialist. You can invite the community to it by advertising this in the local press. And after you've had the event, it is good to report the event and also have it published in the local press. How do you do this? it is important to speak with the departmental leaders who are going to do the program, to have a very good flyer and work with them to contact the local press. You can introduce yourself to the local newspapers, editors. One of the good things about the local press is that they're there to report events about activities within that locale. And also, they are willing to hear from communities such as the church, health groups, and anyone at all doing something of relevance in the community. And so don't exclude yourself from the local press. Use it as a means of engaging your community. Is anybody doing that in your local church? Engaging with the local press?
No, that's a new one, Pastor. So I think that's quite good.
Yeah, it is important. You as a local communication, church communication secretary, you can make an appointment to see the editor or the reporter of your local newspaper. All boroughs have got a local press. And these days they are all online. So make a point to contact them and ask them. I mean, in another presentation, I've gone through the process of how to make contact with the local press. Let them know that your role is to report about events taking place in your local church. And they'll be interested. And tell them you want to know how to communicate with them in terms of your stories. They might give you an email address. And also ask them when is their deadlines for receiving any report for the next edition of the local media press. And they will tell you all of that. And when you have a calendar of events, you can be selective. And sometimes you don't have to write. You can find somebody who is also very good at writing within the church. Let them put the story together. You don't have to write long stories. It could be just about 350 to maybe a maximum of 500 words. Have some photographs with it, and your local news will be very willing to report what is going on in your church. The same thing goes on with radio. You can contact the radio, local radio stations about significant events that are taking place. Just weigh them, see which events can be broadcast by the local press. I still remember some years ago in 2 different churches that I've been, we made contact with the BBC local radio. And the church was celebrating 50 years being in Luton. Now we arranged with the religious representative, and we had about 45 minutes coverage of our activity. So all of these things are possible. And they interviewed some of the church members, and we had a church leader preaching on that day, and we got him also interviewed as part of the story of having the church within that community for 50 years. So there are many things that can attract the local media, and even television, regional televisions. Recently, one of the churches in London, they did something for the homeless. They were feeding the homeless every single Sabbath. And in the winter, they decided, and that was just about a year ago, they decided to give £40 each to those who have been coming for the, to their food bank. And when I heard the story, I decided to contact ITV London. And they were interested. And even though it was just a few seconds, about 30 seconds, it was a good coverage. And they interviewed the church pastor. So don't underestimate, the stories that you have and also the potential for the media to report them. And all of these are good public relations for your local church. Any questions on that? And you can do this by just contacting them, write to say you want to have a conversation with them regarding how you can, share stories with them. It's about building relationships with them. Okay. And also your role as a local communication leader is also that you are a source of information about the church. I was in a certain church in London some years ago, and I made contact with the local press. There was an incident in the area, and the incident involved one of our children, Seventh-day Adventist young person. She was involved in an accident. When the newspaper decided to write a story, they decided also to contact that church, the church, to hear a bit about this individual who was involved in the accident. Now, without that relationship, they wouldn't have contacted us. And they would have just written something that was from the other party's point of view. But when you have a relationship with them, they give you the opportunity to correct an information about the church, should a story crop up about the church. And when you get that inquiry, all you have to do is to contact your local church pastor and the relevant people, and you can put up a story or a response that is quite appropriate to the media. That is why it is important to have a relationship with the press. Is this something we can do?
Yes, but I think this is, yeah, I've done this before in relation to having that relationship with the press. I used to work with the press before some years ago, so I know how important that is. So yes.
Fantastic, fantastic. And this is what it is. All of us can do that. And I would say, go beyond just being, doing comms in your local church, but think about reaching out to the community, letting them know what is happening within your church. Still on the local media, one of your roles is to help with writing letters to the editor. And when I say writing letters to the editor, there may be something that maybe has been shared about your church. If it is not positive, you have the responsibility, working with your church pastors or elders, to correct that information. And you can write that to the editor of that local press. If it is in the national newspapers, then of course, work with your conference communication director in order to frame appropriate response to something that is negative about the church. And these things can happen from time to time. Now, what about the denominational media? What we just dealt with has to do with external communication. Now, denominational media has to do with internal communication. And so all the reports that activities that we do in our local churches, we write reports of the events and we send them to Messenger, the BUC News, or the NEC newsletter. Now, this helps to encourage our members that, yes, what we're doing is worthwhile. And it also encourages other churches that, your church is doing this and they can also learn from it. Just as, your church also learns from other churches. I mean, stories about what is happening in other churches. And I know a lot of us know how to do this, but we still struggle to get stories out of local churches. That is the base where we expect a lot of stories to come from. And one of your key roles is to see how you can look at the events and make them newsworthy, to write and send it to Messenger, BUC News, and also the NEC newsletter. How many of you are already doing this? I take it none of you is doing it. It's one of the roles and responsibilities of the communication department. It encourages the church to also, do their departmental roles well when they know that it will be reported in the Messenger or in the BUC News or in the NEC newsletter. Now, one of the things that you have to be aware of is knowing how to put the stories together. And I know Sandra is doing that one, but any story at all that you want to write has to have, has to answer the 5 W's. They say 6 W's sometimes. That is, what is the story about? Who is involved? Where did it take place? When did it take place? And also, how did it take place? And so when you're writing a story and you have this 5 W's, it helps you to write the story to these W's. And that covers nearly everything that anybody needs to know, the 5 W's. And so it is important to be able to gather the story of the activities that are taking place within your local church. And that is how we get all these stories shared, and sometimes even on our websites. Now, one of your roles is also to oversee photography of activities within your church. You may not have to be the person who does the photography. You can have somebody who is gifted with taking photos, and they can be taking photos of the activities. Now, when you put the stories together, you can take, gather the photos together with it and send it to. If the story is going to to Messenger, you can send, selected shots that goes with the story you've written to the Messenger or to the BUC or to the NEC newsletter. So photographs are very important.
Pastor?
Hello.
Sorry, I think we need to make the point with photography that we do have to be careful. Indeed. Because some of our churches have children in care in them and they're not allowed to be photographed. Indeed. So we have to be very careful. If we plan to send a photo, I think we need to ask the people in it if that's acceptable.
Indeed.
Yeah.
When, there are presentations on writing and taking photography, which will list all of this, the do's and don'ts of photography, and also seeking consent from individuals, especially when children are involved, seeking consent from their parents and so on. So yes, thank you for raising that. Any photos that have especially children in it, you have to seek consent, or be careful not to include them at all.
Pastor,
Hello.
I remember some years ago what we've established in while I was part of the communication team in Leicester. We established from the church on a whole. We voted on the church board, but what we decided on a church level is we made it clear during a Sabbath session that we are not allowing no one to take any photos within the church unless they contact the the relevant communication or pastor, etc. personnel. And also we have that disclaimer. We put quite a few things in place so that in the event that even the communication personnel are taking photos, they have to be selective, and they're individuals in the church who you just don't start pointing your camera at and so forth. So there's some level of communication within the church leadership to make that acceptable and also make the whole church aware as well.
Thank you very much for that. And it is very, very important to especially announce from time to time the communication department. You can even share this on your screens that the church has got an official photographer and nobody should take photos without the permission of the communication department. So yes, indeed. Is a very good point there that you've made. Yeah. So still talking about the work of the local church in terms of the communication secretary. One of the things you also do is to help with special events by giving special attention to the public relations aspect. And so if a department is doing a program, and you know this in advance because they have shared this maybe at the church board, and you know that this is the date they'll be doing it. Check with them when their flyers or promotion will be taking place. And you can guide them as well in terms of sharing this in your news bulletin. And if you think this is something that will warrant sharing in the local press, you help them as well to share this in the local newspapers. Some adverts are paid for, but they have columns also that are free, that you can have free adverts in. So bear this in mind when it comes to special events that you want to attract people from the community. It also falls under your role. Okay, now the next thing is one of the roles you have is to produce news items for the church bulletin. And I think for most churches, this is the main task. Are you with me? Either for church bulletin or a small church newsletter. Some churches produce, either a monthly or a quarterly newsletter, which they share with members, and some share with their neighbors in the community. And some design these church newsletters to share with former members or members who are not able to come to church because of ill health or some other reasons. So, producing news items for the church bulletin. And here, let me engage with you a little bit. What are the key challenges when it comes to producing church bulletins? Is it smooth sailing for all of you? Or there are challenges when it comes to producing church bulletin?
I don't think it will be challenging particularly.
Say it again.
I don't think it will be challenging particularly,
Mhm.
but it's a good thing to know that it falls under the communication department. I mean, yeah. So I'm glad to know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the challenges that a lot of communication leaders have is that they struggle with people sending their items to meet their deadlines. Now, if you have a deadline, you have to communicate that clearly on a regular basis to the church. It is important that they know when your deadline is, that if they fail to submit their announcements or whatever information they want to share with the church, if they don't present it by this date, it means that it will not be published in the bulletin or the newsletter. It helps you to avoid having conflict with church members who think they brought an announcement and you refuse to put it in the bulletin. Because I know that many of you have got your own responsibilities and you need to work within a certain time frame. So it is important to share that with the church. And also you handle announcements in the church. In the past, it used to be for some churches, the church secretary who does the announcements. They still do for certain announcements like transfers and particular church board informations. However, the communication department is the department that is tasked with making verbal announcements in the church on a weekly basis. And so it is good to make sure that you receive the announcements in time so that when you're sharing it, some churches share it on slides in the church, and you need to receive them, at a certain time to be able to format it for the church.
Pastor?
Hello.
I think it's in Erdington, we used to do a church bulletin and a newsletter.
Yeah.
And it used to take quite a lot of work because it was quite an in-depth thing. And then we used to just find them littered around the church. Nobody took them home. So we actually asked the church, did they want a bulletin and a newsletter? And the church at a business meeting voted not to do it any further. So I think, if you're a small church as well, maybe ask the membership if they want this doing, because it may be something that they don't really want. So long as they get regular announcements, they're happy with that.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yes. The bulletin doesn't have to be printed bulletin. What many churches are doing is they're still producing the bulletin, but they're sharing it electronically. And members are receiving it via their phones and so on and so forth. So, yes, people still like to see the format and they want to see, even though some people want to hear the announcements in church, they still want to, if they want to make reference to an announcement that has been made, they can go back and look at the bulletin electronically.
Pastor, I mean, that's a good point. I just to make a sort of point here. One of the things that we did some years ago is, and this is even happening today in some churches, is we make available a few copies to the elderly.
Yeah.
Because they love to see they like to do, have it feel that touch of at least a paper copy where they can read in their quiet time. They don't have the time to be going on the gadgets. Although some of them, quite, trying to get in touch with technology, they're those who just like to have that paper copy. It's just part of their DNA. And so we made that available for them. Whereas the majority would be online, whether it be WhatsApp, etc. Yeah.
Kevin, thank you so much for that, because we have to be inclusive. We don't have to make some of our members feel like they are excluded in certain things. So if you use the different platforms, the verbal announcements in church, you have the electronic versions where maybe a good number of members will feel comfortable with, but also you are intentional to look at the elderly folks in the church who will prefer the printed form. And it is very good, very thoughtful to have that. Thank you very much, Kevin, for that. And also Mary for raising that point. So it is good when you're doing bulletins just to make sure that people know that there is a deadline. And I have put this here, a simple statement that tell people that, you how do you call it? You crave their indulgence in making sure that, you get the announcements in time so that everybody can benefit. Now, what are the communication channels you use? And again, I think we have touched on some of them already. What are the existing available channels you use to engage your audience? So we use announcements, isn't it? On the Sabbath. Many churches now are using WhatsApp. The WhatsApp group that they have, some communication departments, they have announcements only. It is not an engagement WhatsApp group. So they share information from leadership so that people can go back and see what is going to happen and what is happening in the church. I don't know, but if some churches still, send emails to their members, it could be one of the channels. What about social media, other social media platforms, whether Instagram, Facebook, wherever? So it is good to look at all the channels that you are using now to engage your members and check whether everybody is reaching everybody, or there are some individuals who perhaps none of these channels is reaching them. And so, yes, as the point is, think about those you are reaching now and how to reach those not in the loop. And when we spoke about, the bulletins, Kevin, you mentioned that if you just focus on digital bulletins, you might exclude some of the, older folks. And so you think about them and produce something that they will appreciate. But if you are starting, you can still check with your own, target audience to know how they would like to, get their information. You can do this one Sabbath by doing a survey or asking, what are the channels? How would you want to receive messages from the church? And people will let you know. And so you can include new ones that have not been mentioned if it is feasible to do. What are going to be the best communication methods for our message and for our audience? That is the question you will have to ask, and then reach out to them through that survey. We've got a few more minutes, and I would like to say that last but not the least, how does your target audience like to get information? Is it through social media? Is it through your website, newsletter, bulletin, or announcements? These are all important. As you oversee this, it helps you when there is any form of information, you reach the entire church through the channels that will be preferable to them.
Asta?
Hello.
put out only because we've had an instance to do with this. So it's just to make people aware that if you use email, please ensure that you send it via BCC rather than sending it to, because if you share somebody else's email address with somebody without their permission, we can actually get ourselves into hot water.
That's right. That's right. Thank you.
So you must send it in by using the blind copy function rather than just the to function if you're using multiple email addresses.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And these days, because there are so many scammers as well, it is very, very important to bear that in mind. You may share an email if it has so many other people's names and it gets into the scammers, they intrude on all these people. So yes, very, very important. Yeah.
Pastor, I like the point you made earlier, and I don't know if you want to reinforce it. I think it's good as leaders that we at least spend a Sabbath communicating to our membership, because these are some of the feedback you'll get. You'll be able to move forward as to decide on how should you be addressing communication by the various media, and you get a positive feedback. You'll be able to understand which way to go, which direction the church prefer their communications.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you so very much. And so, just as you've made that point, it is important. Get one Sabbath and speak with leadership to give you that slot and do that survey and get the response from them. That way, nobody will blame you because they have told you how they want to receive the information. Thank you.
Sorry, Pastor.
Yeah, sorry.
Just as a point of interest, so we stress the importance of it. Recently, the Ministry of Defence was fined £350,000 by the Information Commissioner's Office because they did exactly what we've just talked about, sent an email to multiple people, and which meant their emails were shared with everybody.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now, it means, as communication leaders, share this information with your boards, your church board, that any emails that are sent has to be, blind copied, as opposed to, sending the details to everyone who is receiving it. Okay. I mean, in recent years, it looks like people have stopped doing that mass sending, but there are still people who are not aware of it. So yes, share this information that anyone sending emails to everyone, have to use a blind copy instead. And before we close, and also, give you a couple of minutes for any questions or comments. I suppose you all receive the BUC news. It's a weekly newsletter from the BUC.
No.
No?
No.
Okay. Now, this is for every member, and I will share the link with all of you so that you can subscribe it. You can get the news on a weekly basis, except when there is a gap or a break. But yes, and we expect your stories. We expect your stories, for the BUC news.
Pastor, I need to
Yes.
make a comment on this. Sorry to be.
Yeah, go ahead. I was just gonna call you. Yeah.
Yes, we're receiving these the messenger communication, etc. My question to you is: we are paying for this, or are the conference paying for this? And I think a lot of questions around how is this being done, because a lot of the church is still not aware of the communication of these messenger newsletters.
Yeah.
And who is paying for it?
Yeah.
One more question. And if so, if the church is paying for it, why is it that we are paying for it and the cost of it as well?
Yeah, let me start with the BUC News. BUC News is a free electronic email to all subscribers. You don't pay, your church doesn't pay anything for it. When it comes to Messenger, it used to be in the past that churches, paid something for it, but I don't think that is the case anymore. Copies are sent to those who subscribe to receiving hard copies, and they send it to your home address. I think that is still something that is funded by the union. Is that what you, Kevin?
Well, I mean, I've subscribed to it, so I'm fine with that. I think what's happening is that treasurers realize that the money coming out still for Messenger.
Excuse me, Pastor. I believe the Messenger money is deducted from whatever gift aid is accredited to a particular church. Because I know at Erdington we have members that get them direct, but we also receive a batch via our interest coordinator.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it's stopped, but the cost was definitely deducted from the gift aid.
Okay, what I would suggest is, get your church board and your church pastor to look into this and ask how much your church is paying for it. And if your church thinks that payment should be otherwise or whatever, you can relay that through your church pastor to the conference. I have to find out, what happens with the messenger in terms of payment. But as far as I know it is being subsidized or, funded by the union. Yeah. But they change how they produce the messenger. They have a PDF copy, which some individuals like to receive. But, they may, I think about 3 years ago, they asked for whether there will be individuals who would like to receive the hard copy and those who would like to receive just the electronic version. So we'll look into this and get back to you. Yeah. But you can do something that is promote the BUC News and share your stories in it. Raphael, can I have your question? And that perhaps will be the last one before we leave the breakout group.
Thank you so much, Pastor. I just wanted to ask a few questions about funding since that's come up. First of all, how can the communications team raise funds for itself, just like other departments do? How can we possibly raise funds? And also, is there like a designated fund on there, whether from BUC or for NEC, that we could possibly tap into? Because we do strain a lot on the local church.
Yeah, that is a valid question. But I think the department, just like most departments, the funding is done by the local church. The church board, through the treasury, assign a budget for all departments. And I think that is where you work from. The conference, I mean, I'm not sure if the conference has got any monies for the communication department. But, from the union, we don't have any budget for local churches. So, yeah, I think that's what the situation is.
Pastor, just a quick one. I don't know if it's applied here or for the other section. I don't know. That deals with live streaming. What is it about the new, like when we want to present things on the screen, like the hymns and this sort of thing? Can you give some information on that, if possible?
Yes. I'm sure that will be cut off soon. But let me say that there is the make sure your church is registered with the CCLI, that is the Christian Copyright Licensing International. They have an agreement, for all Christian churches, and that will enable you to produce hymns and worship songs, on your screens, photocopying music from authorized publications, showing films, performing or playing music, and so on and so forth. They're the best bet. I don't know what happens with the NEC, but when we're at the SEC, the organization paid for all the churches, so that they have that license from the conference point of view. I don't know if that is still the case over there, but
Pastor, Pastor.
Hello.
Pastor, it is in place in the NEC.
Say it again.
It is in place in the NEC.
Okay. So
Pastor Phil Pott is the person to go to for
Indeed.
information about it, because each church is supposed to register what they want to do. So because there are various elements of the license, so for hymn singing, for live streaming, and there's some other categories, and we're supposed to tell the NEC which categories we want to be covered for.
Yeah. So there you are. It is something you don't have to worry about, but just check with your communication director and you're all covered. Okay, I think our time is up. So in order for you to have that break, I'd like to say thank you very much for being here and also for your contributions. And I pray that you'll be able to function a little bit more better with this knowledge that you've gained here. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor.